Hey, I'm Hristo,
Hey, I'm Diego.
and we're representing UWC Mostar together with Daniel, who's behind the camera. We cross the Red River every day on our way to school, and so we are quite familiar with the sight of sewage being dumped into it, which you can imagine doesn't smell the greatest.
Mostar has well-known issues regarding its sewage system, or lack thereof. Therefore, we wanted to use this opportunity in order to find a way in which we could observe and solve this issue using the planet satellite data. Sewage is defined to be the wastewater produced by humans. In Mostar, 93.85% of sewage is unclean, and much of it contributes to the pollution of the river. Let's look more into the specifics of this.
Sewer systems that end up dumping in rivers without any previous sanitation are just a temporary solution that only help urban areas in the short term, making them appear clean, but in the long term this is terrible for cities, creating environmental issues such as spread of germs, worms and toxic materials, which directly affects human health by spreading illnesses such as hepatitis, cholera and typhoid, contamination of water sources downstream, contamination of land that is near the water source, loss of nutrients for farming, and bad smells, which also affects the tourism and, by consequence, the economy.
There are many solutions, like for example, precipitation, electrochemical processes, ionic exchange, and disinfection of water with some bacteria. But these solutions require an investment from the governments. Investment that at the beginning it could seem kind of big, but it will be totally worth it. Not just because of the positive impact it will have in the environment, but also because of the impact it will have on the economy. Because historic precedents show us that, in the end, this process will become cheaper and cheaper, thanks to the new importance it will have in the world.
Immediately after getting the satellite pictures, we managed to see the difference between the color of the water coming in and out of Mostar. But this difference wasn't obvious everywhere. For example, geographical features like muddy beaches or rocks can also influence this color. That's when we came across an article in ResearchGate named Monitoring River Pollution with High-Resolution Satellite Images by Paulo Trivero and Walter Blamino. We have employed a method based on high-resolution visible and infrared satellite images, which is able to assess the environmental impact of water contamination with the aim of monitoring riverbanks. This method quantifies the normalized difference vegetation index (NDVI) on crops located close to the river using remote sense data. In this way, it is possible to assess the spatial and temporal progression of land contamination and thus to be able to have an understanding of how much the interventions aimed at improving the situation were effective. They basically write about new river vegetation, but that data is enough to conclude that we can also use NDVI for water pollution. The lower the number, or darker color, the more polluted the river is. A great example of this would be pinpointing sewage leaks inside the town. This could help prevent illegal dumping or locate where sewages have to be constructed. We decided on using Python for calling the API and processing the data from planet satellites, then visualizing the data and storing it using p5.gas as we have experience with those languages. But how exactly do we process it? Our program gets the color from the image coming from the API and runs an equation we designed to approximate the amount of waste in the water. This data then gets visualized in a way that can help the city or the town develop their infrastructure. In conclusion, even though this method is not as precise as physical sensors, it's an easy way to approximate pollution using only satellite imagery, meaning we can use it for every single river or polluter on Earth with 2 mouse clicks. Future expenditures of this project might include building an interactive web map application showing all the sources of water pollution and water pollution indexes.